they don't have voters to answer to, and we do. And that's the constraint. It's an asymmetric constraint that we are under right now that is causing some of these problems.
And that's so critical to understand, because these folks will fight to the death. They will just keep going and going. So the assumption that we're going to be able to come up with a reasonable diplomatic compromise, I don't know that that's baked into the folks that we are dealing with here. And that you're right, they have no voters to respond to. This is, but here in the States, I think we're seeing the impact of this already as it relates to the midterms coming up. I mean, look at the Republicans. You all just lost something in Trump's backyard. I mean, if that doesn't send a message about how freaked out and scared and worried the American people are, I don't know what would.
And I feel like Trump's response indicates that he understands that, because he says that the Strait is going to open up once they stop fighting the war. He says we don't really have a role in ensuring that Iran doesn't control it. He's like, I wash my hands of it, and it'll just go back to the status quo pre-war once we're done.
First of all, I think making national security decisions based on a state house result in Florida in an off-year election is not a great way to make national security policy. That would be my rebuttal to that.
No, but it's the impact, not the decision-making. It's the impact.
Number two, generally, you want the commander-in-chief, in my opinion, to make national security decisions based on one thing. Is this in the best interest of protecting the American people? The decision he obviously made was that I've set a red line. They're not going to have nuclear weapons, and I'm tired of them for 47 years terrorizing the world, shooting us with missiles, shooting our allies with missiles, having this aggressive Navy. And they crossed a line with him, and now he's enforcing it. And to say, well, if gas goes up a nickel or we have a state house race in Florida, we can no longer operate national security policy, I think is an extremely short-sighted and cynical way to assess this. At the end of this, if they're totally defanged, if they meet our objectives here in terms of nukes and missiles and Navy and exporting terror, if there are new people in charge who are willing to abide by some kind of an agreement, that is a net positive for us, for the world, and that's what we're waiting for.
That's the argument that we heard the last time he attacked them, and they declared victory. They said they annihilated their capabilities. So were they wrong? Were they lying? Were they misinforming us? What was the situation before? And then how did it deteriorate in such a short amount of time from then and now? We're talking a few months went by, and now there's this threat. We got to get them right now. They've never, by the way, explained what that threat was. They've never given any information to the American people about why it was urgent.
Well, wait, they do have missiles that can reach most of Europe. You know that.
Right, but the last
you
time
think it's good or bad?
But the last time they did that, they said we annihilated it. Right. That's literally the words that they used. We annihilated their capability. That was this is the problem the president.
You want Iran to have missiles
this is
with
the problem
nuclear weapons that can hit Europe.
The president
set
an expectation. I don't. The president said
then why are you upset?
That I'm not upset. The president said he has annihilated them. That is the expectation. That is the goalpost that he's being measured against. His own words, his own hyperbole. So now that he comes back and says, actually, that wasn't what happened. Now this time we got it right. This time we've all blown them all up. Exactly. He has no credibility here because he already used all the platitudes.
So you're just prejudging it based on your own political views.
No, we're prejudging based on what he said.
What he said that wasn't true. And no one's saying change national, international policy based on the politics. I'm just saying the American people are raising real questions.
But the most important people who believe in
now. The issue is, I really think that the assumption that we are going to be able to root out Iran as a terror entity based on these new folks who have come in, I hope that would be true, but that's just a hope. I don't see the evidence that supports that.
There's a group of people out there now that believe President Trump, what he says, right? They are the Iranian people who witnessed their military get decimated, their Navy get decimated, their ability to shoot down American aircraft, all the things that the Iranian regime promised them they could do. It was revealed that the emperor has no clothes. So whoever's ruling Iran in the next phase, they know that they can't hide behind this false idea that they have this military that's capable of standing up to America and Western allies.
Well, they just need a military capable of standing up to civilians. They still have machine guns. I mean,
I'm talking about the ability of other countries to ensure that they don't have nuclear capabilities. Everything they promised they can do was revealed to be false.
But Joe, you know what? What other emperor has no clothes is President Trump. who said that they had annihilated their nuclear capacity, and that was not true.
Margaret?
Yeah, I just want to say one point to Scott's point. You know, we're just forgetting that days ago, the president was threatening to take out civilian infrastructure for the express purpose of opening the Strait of Hormuz. So I would offer that that is one example where he is tying a military action to basically lowering gas prices. And that's wrong, in my opinion, for two reasons. One, this is long, boring legal opinion that you don't need, but basically civilian structures don't lose their protected status unless there's a specific military objective for it. Lowering gas prices isn't one of them. But two, the point that we all just discussed, the Iranian regime isn't worried about the damage to civilians. So that isn't going to resonate. I mean, it's unlawful for the president to threaten to harm civilians purposely, but it also just isn't effective strategically because the regime doesn't care.
Look, I think tomorrow night he's going to have to lay out military stuff, but also talk to the country about who he's talking to, what they're telling him, and what a post-military action scenario looks like here. That has to include some conversation about the Strait of Hormuz. You know, my impression is the other Gulf states are tired of Iran, harassing everybody and making the region have instability. They're probably going to have to be involved in this. I'm as interested as anyone to see what the president has to say about that.
Let me play. This is Pete Hegseth talking to Trump's base, to the people who are concerned that what could be next, if they try to finish this in a particular way, is boots on the ground.
As far as President Trump and boots on the ground, I don't understand why the base, which they have already, they understand, wouldn't have faith in his ability to execute on this. We're not going to foreclose any option. You can't fight and win a war if you tell your adversary what you are willing to do or what you are not willing to do, to include boots on the ground. Maybe negotiations work, or maybe there's a different approach. But the point is to be unpredictable in that. Certainly not let anybody know what you're willing to do or not do.
I mean, look, he can say that, but the American people also have a say. And it's very unpopular to put boots on the ground, not to mention that there's a good reason for that because it would be extremely dangerous. So, yeah, I mean, to Scott's point, I mean, does the president have to level with the American people about what the expectations are around
Look,
that?
when we're talking about the MAGA base, we have to compare that to the experience that gave rise to the MAGA movement, the never-ending wars, a 20-year engagement in Afghanistan, a 15-year or so engagement in Iraq. That's the parameter, which I think this argument is framed. It's not framed in whether it's 5 weeks or 6 weeks or 7 weeks. And as far as boots on the ground, I've said this every time I've been on this show. If it takes some American troops in a limited engagement to secure nuclear enriched material, I think that would be a wise use of American military power. Is that the same thing as nation building? Is that the same thing as occupying cities? Is that the same thing as occupying a country for 20 years? Absolutely not. And I think the American public would be smart enough to see the difference between
I think
the two.
that the American public would really need to understand how dangerous what you're talking about is, because it is not just a small contingent of troops to remove nuclear materials. Every time we've talked to military experts about what it would take to do that, it is extraordinarily difficult, extraordinarily dangerous because of the location of these materials, and it would require thousands of troops.
Yes, which is why these types of military operations, these offensive operations, starting a war should be going through Congress. This is basically a surprise war that we all woke up one day and realized the country was in. And now we're talking about committing tens of thousands of troops on the ground. If it is properly authorized by Congress, that's a different position that we're in.
There's been a conversation nationally about it, and that did not happen.
Well,
here.
and the president here, again, is being measured against expectations he set with his own base and his own party. He campaigned on no more endless wars, no more Middle East, no more spending good money after bad there, and then he turns around and does a complete 180 without laying the groundwork, without giving the explanation. And again, days before this attack happened, days before the offensive, he delivered the State of the Union address. He could have made the case right there.
We got congressional authorization after 9/11, so there's really no reason that we can't go to Congress and people can't speak through their elected representatives with the military strategy.
Absolutely.